Hello, and welcome to another installment of the Psychology of Better Call Saul, a series which attempts to understand the many psychological motivations of the characters in this television show. In this episode, I am going to take a closer look at the character Jimmy McGill and the ways that his Season 5 character arc seemed to be representing an anti-hero's journey. The hero's journey was a concept created by the comparative mythologist Joseph Campbell, taken from his book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces. He explains the hero's journey as a form of primary myth structure or monomyth, a central archetypal path that has been taken by individuals within mythological texts for the past several thousand years. In this journey, an individual is forced to leave behind the world they know and enter into a strange new world, resulting in a need to change themselves in some profound way, signifying a metamorphosis of character. We can see this narrative structure played out in many modern movies and TV programs, with Star Wars being one of the first films to explicitly use this format as a basis for the screenplay. By examining some of the steps from the hero's journey, I hope to show the ways that Jimmy's interactions with Lalo, Nacho, and the criminal world in Season 5 can be seen as him engaging in a different path, that of someone who is taking the opposite journey of one that a hero might take. With this information in mind, let's get into the analysis. In Season 5, Episode 2, Jimmy has started his law career with the name Saul Goodman, and he is wheeling and dealing his way through cases. He seems to be pretty satisfied with himself and the way that things are coming so easily to him. We see him eating an ice cream cone, and we are provided symbolism of his childlike mind state and attitude, the ways he is ignorant of the adult world he is about to enter into. Shortly after, Nacho rolls up in his car and demands that Jimmy gets in. Jimmy wants to bring his ice cream along for the ride, as he doesn't want to part from the comfort of his everyday world, but he is denied this permission. As Jimmy parts from his ice cream, he also parts from what he thought Saul's world would be. It is no longer games and fantasy for him, a world where he can take advantage of others and make out like a bandit, but it is rather the harsh reality in which he will be the one taken advantage of by others. And as we see in the introduction to the next episode, the once sweet and tasty ice cream cone ends up being devoured by an army of ravenous ants. The predators are descending on their prey the same way that the criminal world is about to begin using Jimmy, as he is driven away from what he knows and driven to that which he does not. This first stage of the mythological journey, which we have designated the call to adventure, signifies that destiny has summoned the hero and transferred his spiritual center of gravity from within the pale of his society to a zone unknown. This fateful region of both treasure and danger may be variously represented as a distant land, a forest, a kingdom underground, beneath the waves or above the sky, a secret island, lofty mountaintop, or profound dream state. But it is always a place of strangely fluid and polymorphous beings, unimaginable torments, superhuman deeds, and impossible delight. The adventure may begin as a mere blunder, or still again, one may be only casually strolling when some passing phenomenon catches the wandering eye and lures one away from the frequented paths of man. In Season 5, Episode 3, Jimmy has been transported to Lalo's garage, and he is asked to help with releasing Crazy 8 from jail. Jimmy seems unsure of the whole situation, and he is considering if he isn't over his head. He is dealing with a different type of situation now, as well as a different type of person in Lalo. Jimmy ends up proposing how much money it would take for him to work on the case, a price he believes is too high, and Lalo agrees without a flinch. And as it had been indicated several times before in the show, money and wealth seem to be the thing that Jimmy is now directing his efforts towards. Income is now his guide in life, his shepherd on the path within this new world. It is the thing that will lead him through all barriers and challenges. And in the next scene, as we see Jimmy meet with Hank and Gomez at the police station, we can make the connections to the ways that Jimmy being guided by his pursuit of money is what allows him, and us as the audience, to gradually drift from the world of Better Call Saul into the world of Breaking Bad. By chasing the dollar in an unheroic way, Jimmy is given the courage to battle with the demons and monsters that await him in this new land. The adventure is always and everywhere a passage beyond the veil of the known into the unknown. The powers that watch at the boundary are dangerous. To deal with them is risky. Yet for anyone with competence and courage, the danger fades. In Season 5, Episode 3, Jimmy goes to meet with Lalo and Nacho at the racetrack to inform them about his meeting with the DEA. Jimmy expresses his concern for Crazy 8 and what might happen to him. He wants to make sure that he doesn't get killed or sent to prison. Lalo responds by saying that Jimmy is thinking smart, an indication that Crazy 8's protection is the last thing on Lalo's mind. Jimmy is still caught between two worlds at this point. He is leaving the place where caring for others and not wanting to cause harm is a primary concern, while entering a place where these morals are of little value. He is also realizing that he is becoming involved in something bigger than himself, and that there may be forces at work that are beyond his control. He proceeds to tell Nacho that he doesn't want to get caught in the middle of something, and Nacho responds,
"It's not about what you want. When you're in, you're in."
Clarifying the transition from one reality into another, from the place of innocence, virtue, and good to the place of corruption, sin, and evil. Jimmy is later dropped off at the courthouse and sees his ice cream disintegrated on the ground, just as his former ideal life is beginning to vanish. But whether small or great, and no matter what the stage or grade of life, the call rings up the curtain, always on a mystery of transfiguration, a rite or moment of spiritual passage, which when complete, amounts to a dying and a birth. The familiar life horizon has been outgrown. The old concepts, ideals, and emotional patterns no longer fit. The time for the passing of a threshold is at hand. In Season 5, Episode 8, Jimmy is in the desert on his mission to pick up the money for Lalo. He has retrieved the money from the Salamanca twins and is driving back with the impression that all is well. But he is soon stopped by some of the cartel members in an ambush, and he quickly realizes the great peril that he is in. As he is seemingly on the brink of being murdered, a shootout occurs and Mike snipes most of the cartel members before they harm Jimmy. But the damage has already been done, and Jimmy has been traumatized by these events. In a similar way to Season 1, when Jimmy witnesses Tuco breaking the legs of the twins, Jimmy has a comparable type of mental reaction to the gunfire and violence. He is shaken to his psychic core due to the emergence of sudden and unpredictable events in which his life was very much in danger. The trauma signifies the way that his former idea of reality has now been shattered. He has now departed from the familiar, both of the external world as well as his own psychic world. The idea that the passage of the magical threshold is a transit into a sphere of rebirth is symbolized in the worldwide womb image of the belly of the whale. The hero, instead of conquering or conciliating the power of the threshold, is swallowed into the unknown and would appear to have died. In the following scene, Jimmy and Mike are leaving the scene of the shootout, attempting to drive out of the desert, and Jimmy's car breaks down. Mike says they need to get rid of the car so that they won't be tracked. But before they do, Jimmy retrieves his world's best lawyer mug, which is also full of bullet holes. Two of the possessions which have been valuable to Jimmy throughout the series are now destroyed. The mug that is a token of love from Kim, and his automobile, a car named Esteem. But now that these things are impractical, and as the car is pushed into the ditch, we understand the ways that Jimmy's esteem for himself is also tanking due to his life choices. He is starting to lose all ability to be respected, admired, or revered by others the further he goes into this new world. Jimmy and Mike then begin their walk through the desert in an attempt to find their way home. Jimmy is forced to carry both duffel bags of money on his shoulders as he walks through the heat. And the longer he walks, the more we understand the symbolism of the way that the money he carries, the the thing which has no intrinsic value, is weighing him down in life in both a physical and a spiritual sense, just as it has been for the entirety of the show. We see Jimmy with a white shirt wrapped around his head, and we get visions of a man that is on some type of quest and headed for a road of trials. But as opposed to the hero's journey, which entails self-renunciation, sacrifice, and transcendence, Jimmy is on the opposite path with his money, a path that is leading towards increased egocentrism, selfishness, and greed. As nightfall comes, Jimmy and Mike are getting ready to settle in for the night, and Jimmy mentions that Kim will be worried about him. Mike becomes immediately concerned about this comment and questions Jimmy on the reasons he is informing Kim of his business. Mike soon says to Jimmy,
She knows. She's in the game now.
What?
Although this is something that Jimmy doesn't want to hear nor believe, Mike is speaking the truth, as he is someone who has knowledge through experience. In this scene, and as the season progresses, we see the ways that Mike is sort of like Jimmy's conductor within this new realm. He is like a shaman or sage who has long since entered into the anti-heroes world of criminals. Mike is someone who knows the way and is now needing to transfer and pass the information on to Jimmy so that he knows how to navigate the dangers that lie ahead. As we see in the following scene, Mike informs Jimmy to save his urine in the event that they run out of water, advice that is soon put into practical use. Mike is informing Jimmy of the various ways he can make sure he survives and navigate the territory, as well as the ways his life will eventually change. As Mike goes to sleep, and despite his verbal doubts, Jimmy stares back at him, wondering if Mike is right. He is pondering the validity of the sage's advice. Once having traversed the threshold, the hero moves in a dream landscape of curiously fluid, ambiguous forms where he must survive a succession of trials. This is a favorite phase of the myth adventure. It has produced a world literature of miraculous tests and ordeals. The hero is covertly aided by the advice, amulets, and secret agents of the supernatural helper whom he met before his entrance into this region. Or it may be that he here discovers for the first time that there is a benign power everywhere supporting him in his superhuman passage. Later in the episode, Jimmy and Mike continue to walk through the desert, and Jimmy has become almost unrecognizable. His new suit that he first appeared in is tattered and torn. His shoes he was once cleaning off with water are now full of sand, and his skin and lips are sunburnt and badly chapped. As he is not only changing in a physical and outward sense, he is also changing in a spiritual sense, in that his values are going through a drastic shift, shifting away from the Jimmy who once had moral questions and frustrations. And as he walks on this difficult path towards a new life, we might be reminded of another Saul, that of Saul of Tarsus, who eventually became Paul the Apostle. In that story, a man born named Saul was living a life in which he persecuted the followers of Jesus and denounced their acts of goodwill. But on the road to Damascus, he had an illuminated vision and eventually converted to become a follower of Jesus, and in the process changed his name to Paul. But in our story, Jimmy is taking the opposite path of Paul, the anti-hero journey, and instead of moving from a life of selfishness to a life of piety, Jimmy is headed towards a life which is focused on himself and in turn rejecting the greater good, all the while changing his name to match that of the Saul who persecuted Jesus. Our Saul has decided to renounce the life of attempting to be morally upright, being baptized into his new life by visions of wealth and power. Near the end of the episode, Jimmy and Mike are nearly out of the desert before one of the cartel members comes close to their location. Mike thinks that they have to act now in order to save their lives before they die of thirst. Jimmy decides to walk down to the road to try and distract the driver while Mike shoots. But with this decision, we sense that Jimmy is acting on several different levels. Not only is he distracting the driver, but he is also taking actions to exhibit his willingness to commit to this new world. Throughout the events of the season, and specifically this episode, Jimmy is realizing that he can't have one foot in one world and one foot in the other. He needs to jump headfirst and commit if it's going to work. Just like in the actual hero's journey, one must sacrifice a part of oneself and turn oneself over to the process so that the difficult journey can eventually be completed. We see Jimmy on the road, scared out of his mind and facing away from the oncoming car, hoping and praying that things will work out. And at the last moment, Mike snipes the driver and the car crashes several feet from Jimmy. Jimmy then follows this act of faith and resolution by taking a hefty drink of his urine, putting the money back on his shoulders, and walking on without saying anything. Although for much of the season, Jimmy has been led down the anti-hero's journey without much say-so or investment on his part, he is now completely committed to the transformational process that will continue to take place going into season 6 of the show, as he completes his full metamorphosis into the anti-hero of Saul Goodman. This concludes this installment from the series on Better Call Saul. Please watch my other videos regarding other characters if you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for watching.